Hi, I'm Gideon.
And I'm Dave.
And this is Strength Through Weakness.
Gideon, you just read Romans chapter 4, verses 1 through 11. And first off, do you know who wrote Romans?
Romans? No, I do not. I believe it was one of the gospel writers, people.
No, it was Paul.
Paul. Yeah.
Anytime someone asks you the New Testament, you got the highest odds of getting it if you answer
Paul.
Paul.
Well,
Just give me a brief summary of what you read about in that passage.
I read about that God accepts all if you believe in Him. It doesn't matter if you're circumcised or uncircumcised. It just, circumcision shows that it's announcing to the public, like baptism nowadays. But in those days, it was a command by God, but you could still believe before that. And Abraham believed before that, and he was still righteous with the Lord, and he still loved Him.
So, before circumcision, Abraham was considered righteous.
Mm-hmm.
So he was considered to have faith, right? Because
Yes.
Paul's talking here about this idea that he's very well known for, that we are saved through faith.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we talked about the passage in Romans. Now we're jumping ahead to James chapter 2, and we're looking at, let me peek, verses 14 through 26. Now, Gideon's just read through those verses, and we're going to start kind of the same way. Who do you think wrote this book?
Well, depending on the last one, Paul.
Wrong. This one's called James because it was, as far as we can tell, written by James. Most people believe the brother of Jesus. It's okay. This gives credibility to our video. Just tell me your summary. What do you think this is about?
So basically it's saying if you have deeds of faith, it makes you righteous, and faith allows for your faith to grow stronger, and it helps just naturally. He was used as an example because he was considered righteous for doing the deed of, he was offering his son, Isaac, up on the altar, even though God stopped him. It was just something that made sure, and he was righteous because of that, and he showed God that he believed fully that he would sacrifice his son, and he knew that God would provide. And as many of you know, if you've read the story of Abraham and Isaac, he said that God will provide when they're going up there.
Okay, all right. So, there's this age-old controversy about Paul saying saved through faith, and then James saying that faith without works is dead. And what do you think? I mean, there's a lot of people that would say that they are almost reading this out as if Paul and James are having an argument in the text of the word. And so what do you think, Gideon? Does one disagree with the other?
I think that there's certain things that Paul agrees with James. And James might think things we don't know, but I believe they're both on the same path, except they're saying different things. They're going over multiple areas. James is talking about easy day things that are like helping people that are on the side of the road that are naked and don't have food. And he's talking about that because those are things you can deal with right away. But circumcision, it takes time, and it's just, it doesn't show that you have faith. Because if you're doing these things, it shows that you have faith and you're fully doing it.
I like his perspective. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it sounds like largely he's saying that they're both elaborating on the same concept in a different way. Is that?
Pretty much, it's just different things, different ways.
Mathew 13, verses 1 through 8. And this is known as the parable of the four soils, or the parable of the sower. And so we've just had Gideon read this. And so, hey, Gideon, who do you think wrote the book of Mathew?
Let's see. What does my Bible say? Levi. And he was a tax collector, and he was also named Mathew.
So this is a great learning lesson. Most of your Bibles, study Bibles anyway, they'll tell you, at least in common knowledge, who wrote that book.
There's 4 types of people, and there's the people that don't even care. Those were eaten up by the birds. There's some that start believing, but then it comes dry to them and they're scorched up. There's some that are withered by the wonders of the world and the worries of the world. And then there were the people that actually believed, and the believers, and they grew crop that allowed for others to believe.
Yeah, and so what I really want us to see here as we look through this is that in the first passage in Romans, Paul is talking about this idea that absolutely faith is what justifies us before Christ, before God, through Christ, and that as we walk out our faith, it will have deeds. If it is real faith, if it is alive faith, it will have deeds. And he even uses the example of Abraham being circumcised after he is justified, after he's said to have faith, as a seal. The work that he did, the deed that he did, was the seal that his faith was real, that it was alive, that it wasn't just head knowledge about who God was, that it was a commitment, that it was a desire to follow God. And so this is the same exact thing. This is not a contradiction whatsoever. It's not some sort of even argument, and it's definitely not some of this, some of that. They're saying the same thing. James is coming in and he's telling us, hey, if your faith doesn't have deeds, it's not faith, it's dead. If you look at your uncle when they pass away and they're laying in the casket, that's not them. It's not them. It's not a person anymore. They're no longer there with us. They're dead. And that's the same thing that he's saying, is if faith doesn't have deeds, if it doesn't have works, then it's dead. He's not saying that you have to have works to be saved. He's saying that real faith will produce deeds. And he gives the same type of argument that Paul does. So Abraham is used in Paul's version to express that his faith is real by walking out this circumcision. And Abraham is also used by James to express that his faith is real because he has an actual deed. He's willing to take his son all the way up to the altar into the last moment when God spares him. And then how does this all play into the parable that Jesus gave us in Mathew? Well, that's pretty simple. That we have these 4 types of soil, and that several of them, they don't survive even though they start to spring up. They may have knowledge of who God is. I look at it specifically as the ones that are thrown in the rocky sand or the rocky soil, because they can spring up. They can say that there's faith. They could say that they want to follow Jesus, but there's just really nothing in it. And so then they go about their life as normal and nothing changed, and that's them dying out. And it's unfortunate, but it certainly happens. And I believe that it's one of the reasons why, as a church, we need to encourage fellow believers. And that's one of the reasons that we do strength through weakness. So I hope that you're encouraged by this to realize that, there are a lot of places that people call out as some sort of contradiction. And when you dig a little bit deeper, you begin to see that God has harmoniously put the entire Bible together. So that's it. Signing out.